expressed in this show belong to the person expressing them. They do not purport to reflect the opinions or views of Rancher or any other entity.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Coffee and Cloud Native, the show that shares news and interesting content related to Kubernetes, Cloud Native, and whatever the heck else I feel like talking about. My name is Adrian Goins, and I'm delighted to be here with you today on this lovely zombie-free Wednesday. If you're watching live, consider following or subscribing to the channel. Or subscribing, depending on where you're watching. If you're watching in the future, give the video a thumbs up so YouTube shares it with other people. Join the free community site or the Discord server, or where's that button? Discord server, no. Discord server, it's always in reverse. I'm never gonna get that right. Anyway, yeah, so chat happens there. There's a bot that relays between come hang out with us during the show, after the show, and let's just go say hello to people who have decided that this is the best meeting that they can join at this time of the day. Oh my gosh, zombies. Wojtek, hello. Wifebot, Ian, the Incredible Mulk, hello. Honk, nice goose icon there. Stephen K, Mladen, Isa Aguilar, Isa or Isa? I'm gonna keep saying Isa. You can tell me if I'm wrong. Sheep, awesome. Marco, Nuno, Ian. Thank you all. We've all already been chatting in the thing, so everybody above that I've already been talking with. Hello, 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 hello. And if you're watching on Twitch or YouTube, hello as well. We got to burn through a bunch of stuff today because I have a lot of content, and then I have the cool tool of the day that we didn't get to yesterday for reasons that I can't explain. Tocino, good morning. Awesome. Tocino is bacon, for those of you who don't know. Tocino at BP? I'm not sure. I like the Tocino part, though. Anyway, first up today is Wednesday, and that means it's time for continuous inspiration. Today we look inward to share stuff from the CNCN community, either new members who've created a bio for themselves, thank you all, or content created by community members. And so first up, we have a terminal window. It's gonna be hard to share stuff off of that. How about that window instead? Where I'd like to introduce you all to Marco Kilchhofer. He is Swiss, currently working at Swiss Post. Says he doesn't need the latest hardware, but the latest open source software. Awesome. So he is from Switzerland. He works as a system engineer at Swiss Post and has had a broad career, starting out as an electronics technician in 2005. And then in 2015, did a big project putting edge technology inside of 2,000 buses in Switzerland. That's super cool. Proving that microservices and containers are not just limited to data centers and the cloud, but also work great at the edge. Love to hear more about that, Marco. Thank you. Welcome to the community. Let's burn content. Y'all know the drill. The collector bots have gathered a bunch of stuff for the show. Trufflebot has scored them from 1 to 5 coffees. He's going to post them one at a time in Discord. Anyone watching live can rate them, and your votes are used to train the machine learning model that helps curate content for the show. First up today, jump over to the live voting channel. First up today, we have a return. Blast from the past. KubeInvaders is back because there have been some additions to it. This is like a little 12-second video that's really pixelated because it was filmed small and then blown up large. But in addition to some other features, now if you run over one of the pods and then shoot it, it will trigger a kube-linter scan of the pod and show you that output. So ever since we had KubeInvaders on the show a year ago, he's been working really hard on building out more functionality in it to make it more than just kill, kill, kill. And so he's got a lot of fun little gamey things in there. If you haven't checked it out since a year ago, check it out again. Super cool. Learn drone coding? Really? I'm gonna have to go back and click that later. Drone coding. I'm sure that whatever drone they have there in that picture is not programmable. I have a drone here. Here, got my my Mavic. Hello. Sitting there being very dusty because I haven't flown him in a while. Next up, we've got An EU-backed bug bounty program for Matrix. All right, so there's all this chat stuff going on out there. There's Rocket Chat, there's Matrix, there's Mattermost, there's Slack, whatever. There's IRC, there's WhatsApp, there's the WhatsApp-apocalypse going on right now where everybody's moving off to Signal or Telegram. Remember, if you're moving to Telegram, Telegram's not encrypted. Your chats are just sent in plain text across the internet unless you specifically create a secret chat. So not the best option. Signal, better option. I gave them $10 the other day and I posted something. If you do use Signal, throw them some money because they're entirely donation supported. Anyway, this popped up because back in the day, before I rolled out a Mattermost server, I remember looking at Matrix and Rocket and something else I can't remember now. And I settled on Mattermost and I don't remember why. And now we're over on Discord. But Matrix is actually in use by lots of governments, in addition, as is Mattermost. Slack, not so much, interestingly enough. The government doesn't trust Slack, why do you? There's a bug bounty now, backed by the EU, for poking at Matrix and figuring out if there's any kind of bugs in it. Where is the... Their links are to stupid things. Like if you click on open source, it tells you what open source is. If you click on Twitter, it tells you what Twitter is. I don't care about what vulnerabilities are. There. What's a vulnerability? Here's the bug bounty program. You can get anywhere from 50 euros to 5,000 euros, depending on the severity of the bug. And what's interesting about this for me is that Matrix does provide E2E encryption based on the same algorithm that Signal uses, both on one-on-one conversations and in group conversations. Having just moved from WhatsApp to Signal, I'm a little bit sad that, but I understand why, but I'm a little bit sad that I don't have a web interface for it so that I can't use it in Rambox where I have all of my chat stuff, that everything that I talk to, all in a single window. So I'm gonna bring Matrix back out and look at that again. And since I don't use Signal, like I'm mostly looking for something I can use to chat with WifeBot and my parents back in the States. If I could roll out, not Signal, if I could roll out Matrix, then I don't know, maybe there's value in that. So I'm gonna go look at Matrix again and see what they've been doing. If you're a security person and you wanna go poke at it, you got a chance to make some money. I have the continuous inspiration song in my head. I like watching Jimmy Fallon, and I like how the Roots always like do their little jingles for him. I don't have a backing band behind me of really talented people who can just make up jingles on the fly, so y'all are stuck with whatever I decide to sing. Vertical Pod Autoscaling. Almost didn't make it on the show because we've talked about Vertical Pod Autoscaling in the past. Goldilocks always comes up from Fairwinds. I don't like Goldilocks because the 4 times that I tried to deploy it, it just doesn't work. It like gets you 96% of the way there and then just falls flat on its face. Like many other things in my world right now, I'm pulling back from let's put a wrapper around basic Kubernetes functionality and because I gravitated towards those things looking for shortcuts and faster ways to get stuff up and running, which is still 100% viable. But since I'm now working on studying and getting my CLI skills down to go throw myself on the altar of the CKA and, you know, hopefully, or maybe get burned at the CKA stake. Anyway, I'm going that route. I'm spending a lot more time in the internals of Kubernetes, which is why I put this on the show. VPA. No, I don't want your updates. Thanks. VPA. We get it. So you deploy something, you need requests and limits on it. You just kind of are like, I don't know. And so you just make something up. So maybe you go back later and actually look at your metrics and say, oh, okay, yeah, so I gave it this much and it really only needs that much. Let me scale it down. But what about bursty things? The whole premise behind Vertical Pod Autoscaling is that it's a thing. It's a controller that dynamically adjusts the requests and limits of your workloads and can do stuff like automatic eviction and so on. Having first encountered this from the Goldilocks side of things, they had all these big warnings about like, it's really scary, it can break stuff, but use our stuff instead. But I don't think it's actually all that scary. They explain what it is. Hooray. Okay, we've got that. But this then goes into a full-on step-by-step guide of how to roll this out and how to get it going within your Kubernetes cluster. But he goes even further than that. First of all, I learned that in the future, we may have restart-free updates inside of Kubernetes when requests and limits change. That would be really cool. Then I also learned, so he talks about understanding recommendations. Like, it's a really good, deep article. Have we had this guy on the show before? I don't think we have. Who are you? What is your name? Povilas Versakas. He writes really well. CK, if you're watching the show, talk to him. So anyway, understanding recommendations. Now, limitations about VPA. I haven't seen this anywhere else. First, don't use it with JVM-based workloads because the JVM does not provide good visibility into how memory is actually being used. Huh, good to know. I don't run any Java stuff. I know some of you do. Second, don't use VPA with HPA if your HPA is also watching the same metrics, CPU and memory usage. It makes sense when you think about it, but you can use VPA with HPA if your HPA is using custom metrics. Cool. Third, some other stuff. Fourth, some other stuff. Fifth, in one of my videos about requests and limits, somebody said, why are you using limits on CPU? And I was like, because I gave some reason. And we got into this little discussion about maybe that's a bad idea, but he didn't provide any support for it. Well, shock, surprise, turns out that there is an ongoing issue. Now, this issue's actually been closed, but it still is receiving traffic and conversation. This is from 2018. It's still receiving chatter up to a few days ago, or I guess a month ago, where it's entirely possible that based on how the limits on CPU are implemented in the kernel, pods which are well below the limit can still be throttled by the kernel. And people don't really know why. They don't really have a good solution for it. They're trying to get this fixed, but the best response to it is to either don't use limits, which may not be a good response, or to set initial CPU limits as a high multiple of the request value. Having content like that baked into the article that gives you not just here's a tutorial on how to do it, but like here's all of the other stuff you need to think about to make an informed decision, makes this the perfect kind of thing for the show. So thank you very much. And then I'm only halfway down the page. He goes into then explanations of how to do this with Mongo, how to do this with etcd, how to do this with, it's a really good article. I can't spend more time on it because I have to get through 10 things. Oh, I disagree with this article. I'm going to start out by saying, oh my God, kitty, meow. I'm going to start out by saying that's a really beautiful cat face. I don't know why people are using these giant images on their articles now. It's like, scroll past my image to get to the content. Elasticsearch changed the license of Elasticsearch and Kibana from Apache v2 to the server-side public license first introduced by Mongo back in 2018. Now, this article continues with a whole bunch of FUD. If you don't know about FUD, FUD is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's basically where you go, "Bah!" and get people to make decisions based on emotion. I dug a little bit further into it. I am not a lawyer, IANAL. However, looking at the wording of the SSPL, I think I understand why they did this. It's basically the ephemeral GPL with a section replaced with new text that I won't read you all of, but the first highlighted section says, if you make the functionality of the program or a modified version available to third parties as a service, you must make the service source code available via network download to everyone at no charge. What do we know that Amazon does? Amazon takes open source projects and sells them as a service, and using economies of scale and market forces and all that other stuff can put open source companies either out of business or take away their own ability to sell their own products and services as a service. And that's what we've seen with Elasticsearch over the last several years. Now, this was first introduced by Mongo, and then there was like a bunch of drama about how it's not actually open source and so on and so forth. And that's basically, let's come back to this article. This article continues to say that it doesn't read unless the SSPL has changed. But since this person linked to it, I'm guessing that it hasn't. They say that the SSPL means that if you use the product, you have to make your source code available to everyone else. And that's not true. It's just if you take the product and sell it as a service, that you have to make everything about that available for people to make their own service around it, including user interfaces and all of that other stuff. The article believes that they're doing this to try and force people to become paying customers. I don't think so. I think they're trying to do it to force paying customers of Amazon to become paying customers of Elastic, which I think is good because they make their product that Amazon just makes money off of. So read this. If you do use this, you at least need to be aware that the license is changing. Go read it, take it to your legal people, and have them make a decision about it. I think it's important all the same. The next item comes to us from Shipwreck. There's a Slack channel in Rancher called Engineering Hotness where some other engineers post stuff, and I kind of troll that a little bit. And every so often, I pull something out of it to put it on the show. This is a package manager like Homebrew on macOS, but it is multi-platform. So you can use GoFish and install the same packages on Linux, Windows, and Mac. I only use a Mac for most of the stuff. I don't have multi-platform systems, like I don't have a Windows machine for work or something like that. So I'm not going to use this. However, I really like the idea of it. This is GoFish. There you go, a little bit bigger for you. This is GoFish. And remember, you can always just scan these URLs, QR codes right here from your phone, or type in the text that appears. And it's basically like Homebrew for multi-platform stuff. It doesn't work exactly like Homebrew, but you can read the fact to understand why they can't directly support Homebrew formulas. I need to get my whole Homebrew stuff into like Ansible or Salt or something like that, because I just go, brew install, whatever. And I have no idea what I've installed, and if this Mac melts down, and like, I just, you all know, I know. It needs to happen. Boundary from HashiCorp. We've had Boundary on the show before. We don't really need to go into, okay, fine. Just in case you missed them. Boundaryproject.io. Simple and secure remote access from anywhere based on user identity, certificates, GitHub, external authentication, so on. I looked at it. Cool. I haven't deployed it because I don't take I'm going to figure it out. Well, here's a walkthrough on how to deploy it from HashiCorp. In a mini kube environment, so in a mini kube environment with Terraform, showing you basically, here's how you can get up and running with it so you can poke at it, and then you can decide if it's worth spending the time to learn more about it to deploy it in production. So that is the Boundary reference architecture, an example deployment of Boundary for Kubernetes. Oh, we're cooking with gas today. Next up from AppDynamics. First of all, I would like for you to notice this terribly photoshopped image where somebody decided that, like, I don't know if those people are just blind, but they can fit 12 lines of source code on their screen. So yeah, somebody totally just like pinned that to the thing. Guarantee you they're looking at a green screen. Anyway, AppDynamics does monitoring stuff. And they have, I know very little about their actual platform, and this isn't a pitch for them. If you use them, great. If you don't use them, I don't care. But they do monitoring based on synthetic users. So they can actually replicate users using your API, using your store, using your whatever, from different platforms. And they had a large Windows infrastructure that was built on VMs that did this for the Windows side of things. And they had licensing costs and VM costs, and they were like, this sucks. So they built a new system called Simple Synth. Love the name, since I myself am also a synth. Y'all didn't know that. You didn't know I'm a robot? I'm totally, WifeBot knows. I'm a robot. That's why I have no emotions. Anyway, So they did this all in Kubernetes with ephemeral Docker containers. They built a Lambda-like Kubernetes-based architecture, and the rest of the article talks about how they laid this out, why they chose to do it in not in Lambda or not in Fargate, how they're doing it with Windows containers, using headless Chrome and Puppeteer, and it's pretty cool that they figured this out, and then talks about the cost savings that they were able to achieve by doing so. I still see people who are like, Kubernetes is a fad. You don't need your Kubernetes. And true, probably you don't need Kubernetes to run your blog. We all know that image, right? With like the 2x4 on the tractor trailer. But this is exactly the kind of thing that Kubernetes is perfect for. And I'm super excited to see smart people figuring out, well, crap, like how can we do this better? And building a solution and then sharing it with the rest of us so that we can all be inspired. Good job, AppDynamics. Oh, you're part of Cisco. Good for you. This next one's for shipwreck, sort of. Kubernetes operators with Python creating CRDs. We've had Python operator CRD stuff on before. I put this on because it's a really cool, like you could just sit down. We've had Max on before as well. You could just sit down on a Saturday afternoon with some coffee or tea or beer or whatever and just go through this. And what I like about this is you'll build an operator that retrieves exchange rates from the internet and then creates a config map with those exchange rates. So it's not like an operator that launches a bunch of crap inside your cluster, but this, I think, is also a really good use case for an operator. So you end up with a config map for EUSD, EUR, whatever, JPY. It's an example. And then your applications, if they need current exchange rates, can just query the config map, or the config map can be loaded and then dynamically updated in real time in your containers so that you always have the current value. And I thought that was a really neat use of operators. Apparently he's gotten some traffic on this post, and down here in the bottom, I thought it was here. Maybe I'm remembering it from someplace else. No, he has a second part of the blog. There we go. So he has a second part that came out 2 days ago, and down here in the bottom, so this is the actual implementation of the controller. He talks about how Nolar, who's the current maintainer of KOP, pointed out that there's a good use case for timers in here. So you can actually like trigger this stuff to update on an interval. Neat use of operators, the operator framework, Python, CRDs, and so on. What's next? Oh, okay, good. I am through all of the items that I wanted to get to, and now I'm into the stuff that I don't, well, not to say that I don't care about, but I have high priority and, oh no, this was still important. This might be the last one. Kubernetes Canary deployments with GitHub Actions. Been talking a lot about GitHub Actions. It's percolating up to the top of the everything, even though it's not actually new. I don't know why everybody's all going crazy about GitHub Actions recently, but they are. And a little bit of Azure sprinkled in there for you. So this shows you how to use Linkerd, GitHub Actions, and Azure, I think Azure Kubernetes Service, to do Canary deployments of your application in, I think in AKS. And it's one of those, can you see that? You see that little scroll bar there? It's one of those things that like you could spend an entire Saturday with this as well. It's enormous. Oh, actually, you know what? I lied. Apparently that's not the, okay. So that's the article, and there's other articles on that page. So it's 25% of the page. So you could spend a couple hours on a Saturday. But anyway, GitHub Actions and Canary deployments with Linkerd sprinkled with Azure. Maybe that's the end of the stuff I wanted to get through today. No, there was this too, man. Okay. This might, whatever. I'm going to stop saying that. Recently, we talked about an article from 2019 from Tigera. I decided that I'm saying Tigera, not Tihera, Tigera. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. From Calico. Calico's also been on the show a lot lately. Well, this was from 2019, talking about how you can run kube-proxy in different forms. You can run it with iptables, you can run it in user space, boo, don't do that. Or you can run it in IPVS. And the net of it was, ooh, did I say net? Oh my gosh, the corporate takeover is happening. IPVS is super fast, but you're not going to get any real value out of it unless you're running a whole massive amount of things. Luke, who I think we've also had on the show in the past, dug further into this about a week ago, and this article is entirely about what happens with iptables. So it's not just yeah, you can do this, you can't, it's tracing kube-proxy's responsibility for passing traffic off within stuff to things when using iptables, and he's going to follow this up with another one on using IPVS. So if you get excited by network stuff, this is for you. I'm gonna have to make it. Okay, we're gonna do. This is going to be the last one before the tool of the day. Zoltan talks about, why is this on the show? Kubernetes, persistent volume subsystem, empty dir. Okay, I think this was one of the lower priority ones that was just gonna go out as an espresso shot. Yeah, so this is just, okay, cool. There's nothing super exciting about this. This is an introduction and explanation into persistent volumes on Kubernetes. Hooray. That's, okay, so I made it through everything I wanted to make it through today. And that takes us now to the last part, the exciting part held over from yesterday. Buckle up. This is from Linkerd. Linkerd makes DRBD. Big fan of DRBD, used it a lot in the past. They've done a really good job of migrating over to cloud native and Kubernetes. And they have this little tiny thing here called Kubernetes Await Election that utilizes leader election functionality already baked into Kubernetes to control the actual startup of multiple pods. So what this means is you can have something where you only really need one of them running, but it's important enough that if the node that's on dies, you can't wait 6 minutes or whatever, 5 minutes and 48 seconds, whatever it is, for Kubernetes to be like, oh, heck, crap, that failed. I better start it over here. This will detect it in 10 to 15 seconds, and the pod is already running elsewhere. It just didn't start its process because you run this as an init. So this dies, leader election detects it, it starts a new one over here, and then it handles updating endpoints for you, so you're not even dependent on readiness probes to control a service. It's dope. I immediately think that I can use this with the NFS server provisioner. In any Kubernetes cluster where I don't have an external NFS resource, for example, DigitalOcean, I run NFS server provisioner in cluster with a block volume store behind it. And that creates an NFS server that I can then use for websites and things like that, or things that don't need block storage that I don't feel like paying for because I'm cheap. But the problem is that if that node goes down, it's pretty fragile, because if it takes 6 minutes for that pod to start somewhere else, everything that had volumes mounted suddenly returns the dreaded stale NFS file handle, and you got to go restart a bunch of stuff and whatever. So that pod being broken tends to result in a massive restart of everything on the cluster. For me, it's an acceptable risk. This would allow me to have multiple NFS server provisioner pods running on multiple nodes, and if the node died, within 10 to 15 seconds, it would fail over. Because the service address didn't change, hopefully we don't get the stale NFS file handle. You may be able to think of other use cases, and Shipwreck's gonna go take this and run wild with it. And if you join the Tool of the Day channel, you can have ongoing conversation about this after the show. This is from Linkerd. Linkerd, I love you. Thank you. And that's it. No, that's it. I'm serious. That's it. Go. Go home. Go away. Go back to your meeting. That is all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Links to everything I talk about on the show go up in the free community site at community.cncn.io after the show ends. Community members get early access to links, extra links, video replay, cool conversation, lots of other stuff. If you have something you'd like me to consider for the show, post it in the community site or in the show suggestions channel in Discord, and ping me if you want. Have a great day, everyone. Keep learning, and I will see you in the next show. Stay caffeinated.